Welcome to Iraqi Dinar News, where you receive real and authentic updates about the Iraqi dinar. If you want to stay informed with moment-by-moment developments, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. In today's analysis, we are taking a thoughtful and grounded look at a perspective that many long-term Iraqi dinar holders can relate to. It begins with a personal story, an introduction to the Iraqi dinar through a US military connection, supported by a letter associated with Condoleezza Rice during her time as Secretary of State. That experience created a strong belief that Iraq's currency had the potential to increase in value significantly over time. However, after many years of holding the dinar without the expected outcome, this perspective evolved into something far more important and realistic, an understanding that currency value is not driven by speculation, but by economic fundamentals. This shift in thinking is critical, and it reflects a broader maturity that we are seeing across parts of the dinar community. Early optimism around the Iraqi dinar was often based on geopolitical developments, post-war reconstruction narratives, and expectations of rapid economic transformation. For many, the involvement of international figures and institutions seemed to signal that Iraq's currency could eventually rise sharply in value. But as time passed and those expectations were not met, investors were forced to reassess the situation more carefully. What stands out in this story is not the initial belief, but the conclusion that came after years of observation. The realization that currency valuation depends on measurable economic factors such as production capacity, political and financial stability, and money supply is a key turning point. This is not just relevant for the Iraqi dinar, but for any currency in the global financial system. When we analyze the Iraqi dinar today, it's important to place it within this framework of fundamentals. Iraq is a country with significant natural resources, particularly oil. Oil exports remain the backbone of Iraq's economy, accounting for the vast majority of government revenue and foreign exchange earnings. This gives Iraq a strong base in terms of income generation, but it also creates dependency. Fluctuations in global oil prices can directly impact Iraq's fiscal stability, which in turn influences the strength and management of its currency. In the short term, the Iraqi dinar is influenced by monetary policy decisions made by the Central Bank of Iraq. These decisions include managing the exchange rate, controlling inflation, and maintaining foreign currency reserves. Iraq currently operates under a managed exchange rate system where the value of the dinar is stabilized against the US dollar. This approach is designed to reduce volatility and maintain economic predictability, especially in a developing economy. For those expecting a sudden and dramatic revaluation, this policy framework presents a reality check. Central banks typically avoid abrupt currency shifts because they can destabilize the economy. A sharp increase in currency value could harm exports, disrupt government budgeting, and create imbalances in the financial system. Therefore, any changes in the value of the Iraqi dinar are more likely to be gradual and tied to measurable improvements in the country's economic conditions. Looking at Iraq's progress, there have been positive developments. The country has made efforts to stabilize its banking sector, improve transparency, and strengthen its relationships with international financial institutions such as the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. These steps are essential for long-term economic growth and credibility. However, challenges remain, including political instability, infrastructure gaps, and the need for economic diversification beyond oil. In the long term, the potential for the Iraqi dinar is closely linked to Iraq's ability to address these structural issues. Economic diversification is particularly important. Countries with diverse economies, spanning manufacturing, services, agriculture, and technology, tend to have more stable and resilient currencies. For Iraq, expanding beyond oil will require significant investment, policy reform, and time. Another important factor is money supply. The value of any currency is influenced by how much of it is in circulation. If a country increases its money supply without corresponding economic growth, it can lead to inflation and currency devaluation. Iraq has had to manage its money supply carefully, especially given its past economic challenges. Any future strengthening of the dinar would need to be supported by controlled monetary expansion and real economic output. The story we're analyzing today also highlights a psychological aspect of investing, patience and perspective. Holding an asset for many years without seeing the expected outcome can lead to doubt and frustration. It's natural to question decisions in hindsight. However, what matters most is whether the decision was based on reasonable assumptions at the time, and whether those assumptions have evolved with new information. In this case, the conclusion that the investment was not silly, but rather a learning experience grounded in evolving understanding is a healthy and rational perspective. It moves away from emotional decision-making and toward a more disciplined approach based on evidence and analysis. For Iraqi Dinar followers, this is an important takeaway. Instead of focusing on rumors, timelines, or unverified claims, it's far more productive to monitor key economic indicators. These include Iraq's GDP growth, oil production levels, government budget performance, inflation rates, foreign reserves, and progress in financial reforms. These are the factors that truly influence currency value over time. It's also important to understand the role of global context. The strength of the US dollar, international trade dynamics, and geopolitical developments all play a role in shaping currency markets. Iraq does not operate in isolation, and its currency is affected by broader global trends. For example, a strong US dollar can put pressure on emerging market currencies, including the dinar. In the short term, we are likely to see continued stability in the Iraqi dinar rather than dramatic movement. The Central Bank of Iraq has shown a commitment to maintaining exchange rate stability, which is crucial for economic confidence. This stability supports trade, investment, and overall economic planning. In the long term, there is potential for gradual appreciation if Iraq successfully strengthens its economic fundamentals. This would require sustained growth, improved governance, reduced corruption, and increased investor confidence. These are not quick fixes, they are long-term processes that develop over years, not weeks or months. Another key point to consider is the difference between currency investment and speculation. True investment is based on analysis, data, and long-term outlooks, while speculation often relies on short-term expectations and uncertain outcomes. The lesson highlighted in today's discussion reinforces the importance of approaching currency holdings with an investment mindset rather than a speculative one. For viewers who currently hold Iraqi dinar, this does not mean that the investment lacks value. Instead, it means that expectations should be aligned with economic reality. Understanding how currencies work and what drives their value can lead to more informed and confident decisions. It's also worth noting that many global currencies have taken decades to strengthen as their economies developed. There are numerous examples of countries that transitioned from instability to growth, but these transitions were gradual and required consistent policy efforts. Iraq's journey is still ongoing, and while progress has been made, there is still work to be done. As we bring this analysis together, the core message is clear. The value of the Iraqi dinar, like any currency, is rooted in fundamentals, production, stability, and money supply. Personal stories and early beliefs may shape initial decisions, but long-term outcomes depend on economic realities. Recognizing this is a sign of informed and responsible thinking. This perspective does not dismiss the potential of Iraq's economy or its currency. Rather, it places that potential within a realistic framework. It encourages patience, critical thinking, and a focus on verifiable information. These are essential qualities for anyone following financial markets, especially in areas that are often surrounded by speculation. As always, staying informed through credible sources and maintaining a balanced outlook is key. The Iraqi dinar remains a topic of interest for many, and its future will continue to be shaped by Iraq's economic path and policy decisions. Thank you for watching Iraqi Dinar News. If you want to continue receiving responsible, factual, and up-to-date analysis on the Iraqi dinar and Iraq's economy, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. This content is provided for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice.